Alright, hey VC, I'm Jamie. Welcome back. We're back with another video. I'm back with vinyl finds. So I've got quite a stack of wax, quite a stack of albums to show you. As in previous videos, I won't spend too long on each album, but hopefully in this pile of records there'll be something that makes you go, that's kind of interesting. And again, because it's quite a stack of records, for my vinyl finds, I like to listen to all the albums before I present them, so that's why it tends to get a little backlogged. So let's get right to it. Here is one more from Record Store Day Black Friday. I did pick up Miles Davis and Live Evil, the double live album. You've likely seen this presented many times on the vinyl community. What I thought was really cool is that they did a nice reproduction of the Columbia Records inner sleeves, which I thought was a really nice idea. And of course on colored vinyl as well, but Miles Davis, Live Evil from Record Store Day Black Friday. Okay, other records include Rush Live, A Show of Hands, this from 1989 on Anthem Records in Canada. Of course, it captures Rush sound in the 80s, maybe not everybody's favorite Rush period, but this really is now a pretty neat time capsule, and I love how this album starts off with the theme from the Three Stooges and then launches right into the Big Money. In terms of the actual recording, maybe the fidelity is not the best in terms of Rush Live album, but still it was fun to listen to Rush and A Show of Hands. Okay, this is a UK band. I do have a few of their albums, and usually you can find their albums generally pretty inexpensively. This is their debut, City Boy on Vertigo. Nice harmonies, a tight kind of hard or heavy rock sound, and produced by Robert Mutt Lang. Of course, Robert Lang would produce AC/DC amongst many other bands, and I do believe this is one of the first bands that he produced, City Boy. So yeah, be on the lookout for City Boy albums. Not too bad. Okay, we've got another great Canadian band. How about the Tragically Hip? This is their album Music at Work, and this is part of their reissue series. I was never quite fond of this cover, but a pretty solid Tragically Hip album. Music at Work, the title track, did get a fair amount of radio play. If you're new to the band, I maybe wouldn't necessarily start with this album, but a great Canadian band worth checking out, Tragically Hip, featuring the late Gord Downie. Okay, finally got a copy of Joan Baez's debut album on Vanguard. Of course, this features the signature of the previous owner. This is the album that began it all, started it all for Joan Baez. So yeah, pretty happy to pick that up. Okay, another Canadian band blast from the past. How about the Killer Dwarfs? This is their debut album. Heavy metal breakdown amongst the other great tracks on this, and kind of almost like the Small Faces. The band, shall we say, was vertically challenged, and kind of like the Ramones, they all then changed their names accordingly, like Daryl Dorff, the drummer, Russ Dorff, the lead singer. Fun, just a great attitude band, and yeah, Killer Dwarfs, great Canadian heavy metal from the early 80s and on the great Attic label from Canada. Okay, I picked up a couple of Fifth Dimension albums. Now, I've always enjoyed the Fifth Dimension, but since the movie Summer of Soul, where the band was featured amongst the many great bands that were featured in that film, I've kind of had a renewed appreciation. So this is Fifth Dimension, Up, Up, and Away. And then we have Fifth Dimension and Lies, Lines, Angles, and Rhymes. So a couple of Fifth Dimension albums there. And I certainly have not a renewed appreciation, but another artist I've been really getting into and enjoying is Jean-Michel Jarre. And so we have the album Rendezvous, and this is Jean-Michel Jarre in concert, Houston, Lyon. Now, I understand that this record is also known as Cities in Concert, and I think Cities in Concert has a few extra tracks on it, but there you go. But what was interesting for this album in particular, and I like the way they have like news clips about the concerts kind of interwoven into the music. It makes for just an interesting listen. This was actually a sealed copy. I think this record from, I want to say the 80s. It does have an 80s look to it, but this was a sealed copy. And in terms of opening it up, because it was gatefold, the downside of having old sealed copies is that the shrink was almost completely stuck to it. Maybe I can give you sort of an indication. I don't think you'll be able to maybe quite see, but it still almost has like a gloss to it, but it's not a gloss. It's actually the shrink that was completely stuck to it. I got it off generally because I wanted to show you, of course, the gatefold here, but the shrink, and it was quite brittle, the shrink on here, the cellophane, but yeah, you can maybe see just almost a strange little, it's almost like a gloss, but it's actually the shrink that got stuck to the album. So that's the downside of albums that have been left sealed in the shrink over a long period of time, be it various conditions that the album has been kept in, shipped here or there, that sort of thing. That can definitely be the downside for sure. Okay, a band, I do have lots of copies of Angel, and this is hell of a band. And I think of all the Angel albums, I think I'm enjoying this one the most. Again, just, you know, good harmonies, good sound, a little bit more, I don't want to say progressive sounding. I mean, we're trying for that sort of mainstream rock sound, but this one was a little bit more adventurous maybe than I would say some of their other albums. But there you go, Angel on the Casablanca label. Okay, picked up this soundtrack, Buster. This is a terrific soundtrack. Of course, featuring Phil Collins. I've never seen the film, but Phil Collins, he had the hit Two Hearts. But this really captures that sound of the mid-'60s. So you got, again, a lot of classic tracks from the mid-'60s, like, what is it, Sonny and Cher. You got Spencer Davis Group, Sonny and Cher on here. And you've also got the Four Tops doing a song produced by Phil Collins, Loco in Acapulco, that again has that sort of mid-'60s sound also. Phil Collins does Groovy Kind of Love on here. The Searchers are featured, Dusty Springfield. It's like, in terms of the sound, it's an absolutely solid soundtrack. So I was more than happy with that one. Better than expected. Okay, Elton John and the classic Live with the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra, and this is where Elton John was having severe problems with his vocal cords, would then have to have vocal cord operations, but managed to get this concert through. And this is just incredibly orchestral versions of a lot of Elton John's catalog. Of course, Candle in the Wind, subsequently released, became a big hit off this one, kind of relaunched Elton John back into the charts again from 1987, double live album. Really great double live album. And I certainly do enjoy the Ed Sheeran Elton John song Merry Christmas. I do think that's one of the better Christmas songs to come along in a while. Okay, other stuff. How about the great Canadian Kate and Anna McGarrigle, folk sisters, French duo. And this is another French album. Most of their albums are in English, but they did release a few French records. And boy, when you listen to this, you're just transported to another time of traditional French folk music. Like it'd be performed in your kitchen or in your living room. A great tradition. It's another beautiful album from Kate and Anna McGarrigle. Okay, this was a thrift store find. Come on. Olivia Newton-John's Greatest Hits. I mean, Let Me Be There. You can't go wrong. Again, featuring early stuff from Olivia Newton-John, but there you go. Belongs in everyone's collection. And this is a movie I was not familiar with at all. I've never seen The Strawberry Statement. I think it's kind of deals with sort of protests and things like that. It might be a film worth checking out, but check out the soundtrack for this. And this is a double album, so this actually doesn't feature any new music or any music exclusive to this, as far as I understand. But it does feature Buffy St. Marie doing The Circle Game, Crosby, Stills, Nash & Young with Our House. You've also got Neil Young Down by the River, Long Time Gone, Thunderclap Newman, Something in the Air. So in terms of the time, great soundtrack. And really nice. The Strawberry Statement, but this looks like an intriguing film. Maybe worth checking out. Okay, a couple of Steppenwolf albums. I've always said I love Steppenwolf. They're absolute psych rock sounds. So we got Steppenwolf and Monster with some pretty wild artwork. That's the one thing, like Steppenwolf, the sound is just incredible. And then like the artwork is just completely out there. And then you've got Steppenwolf, a kind of a die cut cover here, Steppenwolf and At Your Birthday Party. And just intense artwork there. Always happy to pick up Steppenwolf albums. Whoops, the albums are flying out, flying out of my hands. Okay, this was a nice find because it is kind of tricky to find Poppy Family records. You can get some Best of Poppy Family or Best of Terry Jacks and the Poppy Family, but this is their album Poppy Seeds. I think they only released a couple of albums during their tenure. Nice psych pop stuff. No Good to Cry, Where Evil Grows. Good Friends, featuring Susan and Terry Jacks. But yeah, I was really happy to pick that up, Poppy Seeds by the Poppy Family. Okay, another album from the Corgis. I think this band only released a couple of albums. This is the one that had a few more of the hits from it. Really kind of 80s pop, a kind of a soft 80s pop. I don't know what I think about this band, the Corgis. I know some really enjoy this band. I kind of wish they would have had a little bit more edge to them, the Corgis. But there you have it. I do like the cover though, Dumb Waiters. That's not too bad. But the Corgis. Okay, Canadian band, fairly obscure. The band is called Spartan, and the album is called Face the Creator. Now, from a cover like this, you're thinking prog rock. No, not exactly prog rock. There are some slight proggy elements, but I would say mainly it is sort of Steely Dan's kind of jazz rock. It's labeled, I think, in Discogs as kind of funk disco, which it definitely is not. But just an independent Canadian release. Now, a cover like this, you would swear that this is a Roger Dean cover, even with the writing of the band. No, it's not a Roger Dean cover. Cover art and design by Rich Tremblay. So very much in the Roger Dean style, but it is not a Roger Dean cover. And the album was recorded at Marigold Studios, which is Rich Dotson of the Stampeders studio. So there you go. Enjoyable, but not proggy. The cover is a little misleading. Okay, formerly Fleetwood Mac, how about Jeremy Spencer and the Children? So this is his second solo album, but his first solo album officially after leaving and separating from Fleetwood Mac. And this is, as the cover would suggest, Jeremy and the Children, or the Children of God, because he was involved with the Children of God sect at this particular time. So the album has definitely sort of religious overtones, if you will. But having said that, and I know Jeremy Spencer has written that he didn't like the recording of this, but I think it's a pretty solid sounding record and not too bad. And this one was the first time he finally got away from doing any sort of, I don't know, parodies like the Elvis Presley parodies or the 50s parodies. They're not present on this one, but an enjoyable album, Jeremy Spencer and the Children. Okay, how about George Benson and 2020? Of course, the title track. He does a nice cover of Beyond the Sea on this one. George Benson, the great jazz guitarist, but getting solidly into the 80s and getting some pop success too as well. But George Benson and 2020. Okay, shifting gears, how about the very best of John Barry? And this is a Royal Philharmonic Orchestra album. So you've got side one is the James Bond Suite, and then you've got other stuff like Born Free on here, and Alice's Adventures in Wonderland, Midnight Cowboy, anything like that. It's kind of it's John Barry focus. It's okay. It's kind of a hodgepodge, if you will, on Polydor, a little too orchestral. Not bad, but okay. Okay, Climax Blues Band. Really enjoyed this band. Of course, this is the album Gold Plated, and this had the great radio hit, Couldn't Get It Right. They just got a great sound, Climax Blues Band. A sound that went progressively more pop as they went along, but Couldn't Get It Right is that's a great toe-tapping song for sure. Okay, a couple of Burton Cummings albums. I'm surprised I didn't have this in my collection before, but Burton Cummings' debut album. But what a solid debut when you've got I'm Scared, kicking things off, beautiful ballad, right into Your Backyard, a great rocker, and then Stand Tall that opens up side two, and then wraps it up with a really jazzy version of BTO's You Ain't Seen Nothing Yet. So Burton Cummings' debut album. And then I also have a Burton Cummings' Dream of a Child. The title track, Dream of a Child, Break It to Them Gently is featured on here. He also does a version of the Guess Who's Guns, Guns, Guns on here. And yeah, another solid Burton Cummings album. And then speaking of Burton Cummings, how about the Guess Who and the album Rockin'? Heartbroken Bopper was the big hit on this one. This is kind of an odd album, and that side one is kind of like new, or at the time new Guess Who stuff. But then side two, they kick it off with a cover of the track Running Bear, the old Johnny Preston hit. And then side two kind of continues in that sort of 50s mode. So it's kind of rockin', like the first album is 70s Guess Who, and then side two it gets kind of almost ode to the 50s. Not bad, but just an odd record. Here was a nice thrift store find. The Edwin Hawkins Singers and Let Us Go Into the House of the Lord featuring Oh Happy Day. And then, as it says, formerly the North California State Youth Choir. Beautiful, beautiful record. Oh Happy Day was a big hit, and Edwin Hawkins Singers on the Pavilion label. This was a Canadian press on quality, but this was a really nice find and in good condition too. Okay, how about Scorpions and Blackout? I do love this cover. It's just, it's intense, and I do love, like, in terms of the artwork, the absolute detail in the art. So this is the Scorpions definitely getting into the 80s, 1982 on this one. Can't Live Without You. Got a lot of radio play as well, but Scorpions, that's a cover that just leaps out at you for sure. Okay, another interesting cover from a fairly obscure band. This is the Dynamic Superiors and the album Pure Pleasure. And this is on the Motown label. And this all selections written by Ashford and Simpson. So this leans a little bit into disco because this came out, I think, in the mid-70s, I want to say. 1975 on Motown Records. So it's starting to lean into disco a little bit, but there's still a lot of that great Motown soul and funk on here. So worth checking out. The Dynamic Superiors, and again with Ashford and Simpson behind this. Okay, was happy to pick up Neil Young and the Blue Notes and This Note's for You. So this was again with Neil Young through the 80s, where every single album was going to be radically different. And this is when he got back on the Reprise label, and this is pretty solid blues again with This Note's for You, and quite a memorable video on that one. It's still a very enjoyable album. I think this was an interesting way to get back into Reprise with an album like this. But Neil Young and the Blue Notes, and so I was happy to pick that one up. Okay, this is from the budget label Grand Prix series, but boy, oh boy, Ray Charles and Solomon Burke together. So again, this is like a budget issue, but this was in beautiful condition and such a joy to listen to. Solomon Burke, such an amazing vocalist, and of course with Ray Charles, just amazing. Okay, here is an odd album. I didn't think I'd ever come across this one. This is Harry Nilsson, and from the film Son of Dracula. And this is an Apple film, another film I've never seen. I have seen some of the clips. Looks like an interesting film. This does feature Without You, but it also features a lot of dialogue from the film. It's an odd record, to say the least. And this didn't include any of the sort of goodies that came with it. I think it had a huge poster and all that kind of stuff. So it doesn't include that. But still, in terms of Harry Nilsson, who had such an amazing, he was an amazing vocalist, but Harry Nilsson and Son of Dracula. And with this album, I think other than the track Daybreak, there was nothing necessarily new featured on this soundtrack. But again, it's kind of a horror Son of Dracula thing. Ringo Starr featured with this film, and Ringo Starr also produced it. But Harry Nilsson and Son of Dracula. Okay, this is a UK band named Crawler, and this is an extension of the band that was, I think they were called, was it Backstreet Crawler was the band, and then they kind of morphed into simply Crawler. A pretty solid, heavy rock or hard rock sort of thing. I don't think they released too many albums, but worth checking out for sure. Okay, some more funk, kind of blind by funk. I picked this one up. This is Confunction, and this is on the Mercury label. Not too bad, pretty enjoyable. And this, I believe, might have been some sort of a promo copy, because there is a manufacturer stamp on here with a numbered stamp, but that might not necessarily mean it's a promo copy. But I wouldn't think that this would be a numbered copy. But on the Mercury label, this came out in the mid-70s. Again, it's pretty funky. Again, it's leaning towards disco, that sort of thing, but still pretty funky, and I was happy to pick that one up. Okay, John Lennon and the album Walls and Bridges, and this includes all the sort of goodies with this one, with of course the very interesting cover that kind of opens up like this and like that, and then inside it does have the the inner sleeve, inner lyrics book, and then it's got the inner sleeves as well for all that. So it's got a few of the little goodies included. But yeah, Walls and Bridges, from the John Lennon catalog, and of course contains the massive hit, Whatever Gets You Through the Night. And of course on the Apple label also includes the beautiful song, Number 9 Dream. And with kind of a preview of what was to come, his cover of Ya Ya featured on here as well. And of course, then he would go on to have the big rock and roll album of all covers. Okay, here was a kind of a blind buy. When I saw it, I had somebody recommend, said, please pick this up because it's a great album at a great price. This is LA Getaway, featuring Joel Scott Hill, along with Chris Etheridge and Johnny Barbata. And as you can see, it's kind of jammy, kind of nice, kind of rock kind of sound, but I don't know much about this band at all. But this is considered a real classic album, and really happy to pick it up. It's really got a terrific sound for it, and this is on the Atco label. But as I say, not too much information about this band, but yeah, LA Getaway. I think sometimes this is referred to as Joel Scott Hill LA Getaway. But yeah, that was a nice find. Also, another nice find. This is one of those I didn't know anything about this band, and somebody had recommended. Oh, pick it up. This is, I believe, it's either Cubby or Cubby and the Blizzard. This is a Dutch band, and red, white, and blue. It's got kind of that blues rock sound on the Vertigo label. Very bizarre artwork on the cover for sure, but Cubby and Blizzard and red, white, and blue. But yeah, Dutch band, really happy to pick that up. Finally, I have a copy of Cheap Thrills. I'd never had a vinyl copy actually until now. I had the Cheap Thrills alternative from the release not too long ago, but Cheap Thrills, Big Brother, and the Holding Company, of course, featuring Janis Joplin. So happy to have that as part of the collection. Credence Gold. And I do love the cover for this, where the images kind of flip out like that, featuring each of the band members. So you got this. Whoops. Of course, again, you have to be careful that you're not kind of tearing at them, but it's hard not to. So you got that, and then you got that, and then that, and then last but not least, we got that. And of course, a best of with Proud Mary, Down on the Corner, Bad Moon Rising, and still the full version of I Heard It Through the Grapevine at 11 minutes, followed by Midnight Special, Have You Seen the Rain, Born on the Bayou, and Susie Q. So again, there's so many best ofs. This was at least one of the early ones, if not, I think, the first best of. I could be wrong on that in terms of Credence Gold. But there's so many Creedence Clearwater best ofs. Okay, I was given this album for free when I was picking up some albums from one record seller. He said, here, take this one. If you like Jesus Christ Superstar, or maybe a little closer to Joseph and the Amazing Technicolor Dreamcoat. So this is Ted Smith's New Vibrations, A Quest in Folk Rock. So it is kind of a themed album. But what's of note is that Ralph Carmichael is behind this. Now, Ralph Carmichael was also noted for doing a fair bit of Christian music, but Ralph Carmichael also worked with some of the big names like Nat King Cole and some of the big crooners over the years, and Ralph Carmichael, I believe, passed away this year. So this is Ted Smith. So you know it's going to be a rockin' album. No, I mean it's folk rock. It's a themed kind of album, a lot of narration. Interesting, to say the least, but maybe an album I wouldn't have wanted to necessarily seek out and find. But you never know. It's just some different records out there for sure. Okay, here's a band I'm really enjoying. Is the Outlaws, and so here's two albums from the Outlaws. Ghost Riders, of course, their cover of Ghost Riders in the Sky and In the Eye of the Storm. What I really like about this band is that you can tell it's going to be country rock, that sort of thing, but this band really leans more to rock than country, because sometimes some of these country rock bands They tend to be more country than rock, if you will, but this band with some of their records, man, I mean, they're rocking right out. Like, it's terrific. Outlaws, really enjoyed that band. Okay, here is a solo artist, a Canadian solo artist that I've seen just recently. He is from, I want to say, the the Guelph, Cambridge area from Ontario. A solo artist by the name of Dan Walsh, and this is his album, LEWP, and I can't remember what he told me what this stood for, because I picked up this album at his gig. He was playing in Stratford at Revival House as part of a fundraiser, and he's got a fair amount of CDs, but this is his one and only vinyl release, and this was from 2015, but it's real kind of blues rock, and he performs either with the band, but at this one he was performing on his own with stuff kind of on his computer, like where he'd be playing along, but still sounding like really, really good. And he's got kind of the long beard, and he says he either plays as kind of like biker stuff or kind of, you know, psychedelic stuff as well. He seems to play well with both crowds, but this is good, worth checking out. I'd like to hear more of his stuff. But it's a real kind of blues rock, if you will. Dan Walsh and LEWP. But that stood for something he told me, and I've completely forgotten. It doesn't say, I don't think it says anywhere on the album what it stands for. But there you go. And I did get him to sign it. But strangely, he wouldn't sign the cover because he felt that devalued it. But I mean, I would think it only devalues it if you sign the cover or if somebody else signs the cover. If the artist signs the cover, I don't think it devalues it. But he did sign the inner sleeve. So there you go. But no, he would not sign the cover. Okay. Spandau Ballet, like picking up some of their albums, getting more familiar with this band. Parade, of course, you know the track True, but True is not featured on this one. This is on the Chrysalis label. But that sort of, you know, that 80s, the romantic pop sound that was happening at the time. A band that kind of got dismissed, but not a bad band in retrospect, Spandau Ballet. Okay, this was a thrift store find. I mean, you can't go wrong with the kitty on the cover. This is Bent Fabric and his piano and the track Alley Cat. It's all that sort of honky-tonk style piano. Fun to listen to on the Atco label, but with a kitty like that on the cover. I do own a cat, so there you go. Okay, the Everly Brothers, their reunion album, EB84, of course, from 1984. A really nice reunion record. On the Wings of a Nightingale, I still have a soft spot for that one. That's a Paul McCartney track that the Everly Brothers do on the Wings of a Nightingale. And I think, I could be wrong, but I think Paul did write that for the Everly Brothers. But I forgot what a lovely version they do of Lay Lady Lay on this album. Really nice. Really nice reunion for the brothers. Three Dog Night, you can usually find Three Dog Night albums. They are everywhere. This is the album It Ain't Easy. Mama Told Me Not to Come, Out in the Country, featured on here. Three Dog Night, again, a great pop band from the 70s that we do kind of take for granted, but they had a lot of great hits and generally a great sound. Overall, Three Dog Night. Okay, Joe Cocker. Love Joe Cocker. This album, I don't know. This was on Asylum Records from 1978. He does a great cover of Whiter Shade of Pale on here. Also, I Heard It Through the Grapevine, Southern Lady. But this, I don't know, it was okay. But maybe in terms of Joe Cocker's got so much material, so many albums, almost kind of a forgettable Joe Cocker album. This is Luxury You Can Afford is the name of this one. But wasn't even familiar with that one initially. Okay, Bebop Deluxe, gosh, one of my favorite bands, and I know Bebop Deluxe have a number of extensive box sets. They're CD box sets on their albums that they've been reissuing over the years. I haven't picked up any, but I've had my eye on them, shall we say. So this is Futurama. I just love the sound of Bebop Deluxe, that sort of prog glam sound. Great band, Bebop Deluxe. And as I say, those CD box reissues are pretty extensive for sure. Okay, how about Thomas Dolby? And this is The Flat Earth, and this features the crazy track Hyperactive, and this is on Capitol. Thomas Dolby. Okay, and Canadian artist, this is Gino Vanelli and Nightwalker. And Gino Vanelli, a great singer and had a great sound. And his sound, when it got into the 80s, got a little bit more 80s pop with the track Black Cars, but really quite soulful 70s stuff and early 80s stuff. The hit from this one was Living Inside Myself, but a very nice album to listen to. Gino Vanelli and the album Night Walker. Okay, Foreigner and Head Games. You've seen this album 100 times. I was never fond of the cover, but you know, you can't go wrong with the tracks and the Foreigner sound at this time. They were just, you know, producing hit after hit. Head Games, you know, the Foreigner tight rockin' sound. You know, can't go wrong. Picked up Peter Frampton, and I hadn't realized at the time that this is Peter Frampton's debut album. So this is Peter Frampton and Wind of Change. And man, it's a great debut. Great cover of Jumpin' Jack Flash on here. Just so good. Peter Frampton featured with his debut album, of course, formerly of Humble Pie, and of course then still to come would be the massive live album with Peter Frampton. This was a nice find at a recent record fair in Stratford. There hasn't been too many record shows, but this was one that was held at the local Legion. How Canadian is that? The record show at the Legion. But happy to pick up Tommy James and the Shondells and the album Crimson and Clover on the Roulette label. This features, of course, Crimson and Clover and Crystal Blue Persuasion, and this has to be the only album that has an endorsement from a presidential candidate. Hubert Humphrey was running at the time for U.S. presidency, unsuccessful, but as I understand, Tommy James and the Shondells did appearances with Hubert Humphrey, or did some shows for Hubert Humphrey, so he has quite an endorsement of the band for Tommy James and the Shondells, and this dated December 2nd, 1968. But Tommy James and the Shondells, and you know, getting into the kind of psychedelic stuff at this time with Crimson and Clover. Okay, picked this up just days after his passing. This was at the record show just recently, or the record fair. This is Mike Nesmith, an infinite rider of the Big Dogma. So I have a couple of Mike Nesmith albums, and this one was, as I understand, was going to be released as like a video album, but it wound up just being released as a record, as an audio. But yeah, Mike Nesmith, very much at the forefront in terms of video making, or the idea of something like an MTV, or videos where it's not just videos of the song, but much more of a creative process. But this is also noted, you know, the music's, you know, it's Mike Nesmith, and you know, it has Mike Nesmith's kind of tongue-in-cheek or matter-of-fact approach, but each song title is just a one-word title through this one. So Mike Nesmith, and this one a Canadian press on the Canadian Attic label. Okay, the UK band Family, another great album. Always happy to pick up, and I rarely see Family records, so this is the album Fearless. So happy to get that one. Canadian band Blue Rodeo. This is one of my favorite Blue Rodeo albums. They've got a lot of great records. Blue Rodeo, that sort of country rock sound, or sort of alt country rock, if you will. But this is their second album, Diamond Mind. Love the title track, Diamond Mind. I just like the kind of the space that they create on that one. Love and Understanding, How Long, got some radio play, but love the title track, Diamond Mind. And I just love the cover, and yeah, a real favorite Blue Rodeo album. Okay, we have a couple of Lou Reed records for you. Lou Reed live, and as part of the Best Buy series. That's not to be confused with Best Buy, the department store or the tech store. This was kind of an RCA sort of budget release, although there wasn't too much of a difference between the Best Buy budget release and then the initial releases. But this is actually part 2 of Rock and Roll Animal. It was released a few years after Rock and Roll Animal, but from the same concert. But man, it's Lou Reed rockin'. I'm surprised though that they haven't released Rock and Roll Animal and this one, Lou Reed Live, together as like a double album or something like that. That would be a nice record store day release idea. Just throwing that out there. But of course, Dick Wagner on guitar is all over this album, and pretty solid. So there's Lou Reed Live, and a Lou Reed album, Growing Up in Public. Again, this is Lou Reed featured in 1980 on Arista Records. Again, that's kind of the theme of this album, growing up in public. It's Lou Reed being, again, very honest, and some of the lyrics are they're forthright. Some of them, you know, they're almost hard to take, if you will. I don't know what else I can say, but another Lou Reed album worth exploring for sure. Especially the track "My Old Man" is quite quite brutally honest. I can't say anything else about that. Okay, let's move along. And we've got Goose Creek Symphony, and this is their debut album. This is a band I've kind of been discovering on Capitol. I've had some recommendations about Goose Creek Symphony, and this is a great album. Again, it's that bluegrass sound, that country rock sound, and it's kind of, I don't want to say all over the map, but I mean, it incorporates a lot of those different elements. And if you're not familiar with this band, Goose Creek Symphony, they are well worth exploring. They had a number of albums released, and this is their debut, established 1970 on Capitol, but well worth exploring. Okay, I've never been able to find a used copy of this one, so I did pick up the reissue of Teenage Head, one of my favorite Canadian bands, Canadian punk bands from the 70s, and Some Kind of Fun. And this featured, of course, the title track, Let's Go to Hawaii. They do that song on here, again, with... of course, Frankie Venom on the lead vocals, and this is a nice reissue. It's got the nice raised lettering and colored vinyl on this one. But this is the reissue that's on Unidisc and originally on the Attic label. But yeah, nice reissue on that one. No extra tracks or extra bonus stuff that they've had reissued on some of the other records. Carly Simon, this is from 1979 on Elektra, and this is Carly Simon and the album Spy. Not a lot of big hits on this one. We're So Close was the big hit from this one, but Carly Simon there. And we have the album Switched on Rock, the Moog or Moog machine, however you want to describe that keyboard. This should work, but it doesn't. As you can see, it's this sort of treatment for the hits like Get Back, Time of the Season, The Way, Jumpin' Jack Flash, Aquarius, Let the Sun Shine In, Hey Jude, Yummy Yummy Yummy. It should work, but it doesn't really. I was kind of hopeful when I picked this up. It was kind of a blind buy. This was on Columbia, so I was hopeful, but yeah, it just doesn't really work. So this is Switched on Rock, the Moog or Moog machine. There were so many records released like this, spotlighting, that unique keyboard. But yeah, it was worth a shot. And last but not least, how about a K-Tel record to wrap things up? Pure Rock. I didn't even know that this was a K-Tel record, but it was a K-Tel record. And in case you're keeping track, this is a TC270. I mean, it's solid in terms of the artists on here. You've got Kansas, Carry On Wayward Son, Aerosmith, Dream On, Boston, Don't Look Back, April Wine Roller. So again, this is a nice little sprinkling of Canadian acts on here. Trooper, Raise a Little Hell, Rush, Closer to the Heart. But they also feature Meatloaf, Bat Out of Hell. And if you're thinking, this is a K-Tel album, you can see how many tracks are on each side. This is the most brutal edit I have ever heard. It's basically Bat Out of Hell in under 3 minutes, as opposed to the length of the album track. Worth the price of admission alone. And this came out in 1981. And Pure Rock on K-Tel. Okay, I think that's it for this one. Thanks so much for dropping by. Sorry that one went a little too long, but we'll chat again soon, and stay safe. Bye-bye.